Most guys grow up being told to treat women like queens. Put her on a pedestal, they say. Make her feel special. And while the intention might come from a good place, the execution often leads to disaster. See, there's a fine line between respect and worship. Respect is necessary. Worship is dangerous. Because the moment you put a woman on a pedestal, you're not looking at her as a human being anymore. You're looking up at someone you think is above you. And when you believe someone is above you, you start acting beneath them. This is where everything begins to unravel. You change your tone around her. You second guess your words. You start walking on eggshells, afraid to say something that might upset her or turn her off. You shrink yourself just to fit her frame of approval. That's not confidence, that's insecurity in disguise. And women, they smell that fear. It's instinctual, it's primal. She can feel when you're not grounded in yourself. She can feel when you're overcompensating. She can feel when the version of you she's meeting is just a performance, an act designed to impress. What happens next? You're giving more than you're getting. You're over-investing early. You're texting first every time. You're always available. You're constantly complimenting her, showering her with praise she hasn't earned yet. Not because you want to connect, but because you're hoping that if you just give enough, maybe she'll validate you back. Maybe she'll choose you. Maybe she'll finally see your worth. But that's not how attraction works. Real attraction doesn't come from convincing someone. It comes from being someone who doesn't need to convince. When you pedestal a woman, you rob her of the ability to connect with the real you, because you're not showing up as an equal. You're showing up as a servant, a fan, a follower, and deep down, no one wants to date their fan. You might think you're being charming. You might think you're being sweet, but in reality, you're killing the tension, you're erasing the polarity, you're flattening the dynamic. And without that healthy tension, the spark dies before it ever ignites. Here's the twist though, it's not even about her. Most guys pedestal women not because the woman is extraordinary, but because the guy feels less than. He's looking for something outside himself to fill the void inside. He's hoping that if he wins her, he'll finally feel like enough. That her attention will fix his self-esteem. That her validation will complete him. That if she wants him, he must be valuable. But now his entire self-worth is riding on one woman's opinion. That's a dangerous game, because the moment she pulls away, or worse, loses interest, he crashes hard. Not just emotionally, but existentially. He feels like he's lost a part of himself, when in reality, he never had her in the first place. This kind of dynamic breeds neediness, and neediness is the opposite of attraction. It's not the act of giving that's the problem, it's the energy behind it. If you're giving to manipulate, to win points, to buy affection, you're not giving from strength, you're giving from lack. And women feel the difference. One makes her lean in, the other makes her pull away. True connection starts when you meet her as an equal, when you see her not as a prize to win, but as a person to explore. When you're grounded in your own value, with or without her approval, when you can walk away if the vibe isn't right, instead of clinging just to say you have someone. That's attractive. That's magnetic, because now you're not trying to impress her. You're simply being fully, honestly, boldly. And that's the kind of presence that draws people in, not just women, but everyone. Most men who pedestal women don't even realize they're doing it. It's subtle. It hides in the way they over-apologize or hesitate to speak their mind or hold back their real opinions just to keep the peace. It shows up in the way they compliment everything she does, even when they don't mean it, or how they put up with behavior they wouldn't tolerate from anyone else. And all of that comes from the false belief that she's somehow better, that he needs to earn her, that her presence in his life is a reward. But the truth is, a woman doesn't want to be someone's reward. She wants to be met fully, authentically, boldly, not from a place of fear, but from a place of power. When you feel the need to constantly explain yourself, justify your actions, or defend your every move, what you're really doing is asking for permission. You're looking for approval. And whether you realize it or not, that energy is repelling. Confidence doesn't justify. Confidence acts. Confidence moves with certainty, not apology. And when it comes to women, especially in the early stages of attraction, over-explaining is one of the fastest ways to make her lose interest, because it signals doubt. It signals insecurity. It screams, I'm not sure I'm enough, so let me explain why I deserve to be here. Over-explaining doesn't come from strength. It comes from fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being rejected, fear that if she doesn't fully understand your every thought, she might walk away. But here's the thing. People don't connect with perfect logic. They connect with presence. They connect with energy. They connect with how you make them feel. If your entire interaction is based on trying to get her to see your point, to validate your intentions, or to agree with your reasoning, you've already lost you've already handed over the power. You've shifted from being a man who leads the dynamic to a man who defends his existence in it. When a man is truly grounded, he doesn't need to explain every choice he makes. If he changes plans, he doesn't write a paragraph. If he doesn't respond immediately, he doesn't send a wall of text apologizing. If he has boundaries, he states them simply and calmly. No debate, no long-winded rationale, because he knows his value, he knows his intent, and he trusts that if she's meant to connect with him, she will, without him having to beg for understanding. The more you explain, the more uncertain you appear. It's ironic because most guys explain to seem thoughtful, considerate, and clear, but in reality, it makes them come off anxious, unsure, and approval-seeking. You don't need to justify your choices to earn someone's affection. You need to embody the kind of man who makes choices with conviction. And conviction doesn't always come with an instruction manual. Sometimes it's just a simple, calm, this is what I'm doing. No fluff, no filler, just truth. Think about the last time you saw someone walk into a room and command it. Was it because they explained their presence, or was it because they carried themselves like they belonged there? That's the difference. The man who feels he has nothing to prove doesn't talk too much. He doesn't fill the silence with nervous words. He doesn't explain why he's worthy. He just is. That calm certainty is magnetic, and women are drawn to it, not because of what he says, but because of what he doesn't need to say. Now, this doesn't mean you become emotionally unavailable or shut down. It doesn't mean you stop communicating altogether. It means you stop performing. You stop treating every moment like a sales pitch. You stop thinking that you need to be constantly understood to be accepted. When a man needs every thought, every motive, every action to be approved by her, what he's really doing is asking her to lead the dynamic emotionally. And once she's in that position, once she feels like she's the emotional caretaker of the relationship, the attraction dies. Because now she's not with a man, she's with a boy trying to prove himself. Women aren't looking for perfection, they're looking for presence. They're looking for a man who can stand firm in who he is without needing her to validate it every step of the way. That's what creates trust. That's what creates safety. Not the man who explains everything to death, but the man who communicates clearly, then lets go of the need to control how she receives it. There's also a subtle manipulation hidden in over-explaining. Whether guys admit it or not, a lot of that behavior is an attempt to manage perception, to control the narrative, to make sure she sees them in a certain light. But attraction doesn't work that way. You can't talk someone into feeling something. You can't logic your way into love. You can only show up as your full self and allow space for her to respond. And if she doesn't vibe with that, you walk, not because you're cold, but because you value your peace more than her approval. Men who constantly explain themselves often don't trust themselves. They second guess their words, their actions, their instincts, and that self-doubt bleeds into every interaction. It shows up in their tone, in their eyes, in their posture, and women feel that. They sense when a man is disconnected from his own inner authority, and the moment they sense that, they stop leaning in, because now the emotional burden shifts to them. They have to make him feel okay. They have to reassure him. They have to hold the weight. And that's not attractive. That's exhausting. Playing games might seem like a smart strategy in the short term. Withhold attention, delay replies, pretend to be less interested, just enough to keep her chasing, to keep her guessing. But here's the truth most guys figure out too late. Once she realizes you're manipulating the connection, the spell breaks. The interest dies, the respect fades, because women, especially the ones worth having, aren't attracted to boys playing chess with their emotion. They're drawn to men who know what they want and move with purpose. The moment she senses you're not being real, not being authentic, not being present, she starts checking out emotionally, even if she's still physically there. Game playing stems from insecurity. It's a defense mechanism. It's what you do when you're afraid to be seen, when you don't trust that the real you is enough. So you play tactics, you act aloof, you give crumbs of attention, you try to create tension artificially instead of letting it build naturally. And maybe it works for a little while. Sure, you might trigger her curiosity, you might get a reaction, you might even get her invested. But eventually she'll see the strings. And when she does, the attraction flips, because no woman wants to be treated like a pawn in a strategy. She wants to be chosen, not tricked into choosing you. There's a massive difference between being mysterious and being manipulative. Being mysterious means you're fully present, but not always fully accessible. You've got your own life, your own rhythm, your own center of gravity. You don't reveal everything at once, not because you're hiding, but because you're layered. There's depths. That's attractive. But manipulation, that's when you deliberately withhold. You create confusion on purpose. You make her question herself. You give just enough to keep her hoping while always staying one step emotionally removed. That's not power. That's cowardice. What a lot of guys don't realize is that women are emotionally intelligent. They can feel when something is off, even if they can't explain it. They can tell when your vibe is coming from ego instead of authenticity, when your compliments are strategic instead of sincere, when your silence is a weapon instead of just space. That emotional radar is sharp, and once it picks up that you're not being real, she stops trusting you, even if she can't put her finger on why. And trust is the root of attraction. Without it, the whole foundation crumbles. Guys who play games often don't realize how much they're robbing themselves, because maybe they win a few battles, maybe they get her, but what do they actually get? A version of her responding to a mask, a connection built on illusion, a dynamic where both sides are performing instead of relating. That's not a relationship, that's a power struggle. And eventually it collapses under its own weight, because no one wants to feel like they're being tested, controlled, or toyed with. Not for long, not if they have self-respect. A real connection requires real presence. It means showing up fully. It means being honest about your intentions, your attraction, your expectations. Not throwing it all on the table instantly, but not hiding behind tactics either. It means letting the dynamic evolve naturally, with truth and tension both allowed to breathe. When you play games, you kill the natural flow. You force outcomes, you manipulate the rhythm, and in doing so, you miss out on the raw, unscripted beauty of an organic connection. Playing games is also a form of fear. You're afraid to lose, so you try to rig the outcome. But in trying to control it, you kill the very thing that could have made it real. You're afraid of being vulnerable, so you mask it with strategy. You're afraid of giving too much, so you give nothing. You're afraid she'll leave, so you try to keep her hooked with confusion. But love doesn't bloom in confusion. It blooms in clarity. It grows in openness. And when you trade authenticity for tactics, you don't just lose her, you lose yourself. You start to forget what it feels like to be real with someone. You forget what it's like to truly be seen and still chosen. Women who have emotional depth, self-awareness, and options aren't going to entertain mind game. They'll disengage. They'll sense the lack of sincerity and walk away. Because real feminine energy doesn't chase, it responds. And it only responds when it feels safe, seen, and respected. When you give mixed signals, when you hot and cold her to create obsession, when you pretend not to care just to get her attention, you're not inspiring passion, you're creating anxiety, you're not building attraction, you're breeding uncertainty. And uncertainty might create short-term excitement, but it never creates lasting connection. Bragging might seem harmless, even impressive in certain circles. You talk about your achievements, your money, your status, your lifestyle, thinking it will make her see you as high value. But there's a thin line between confidence and arrogance, and when you cross it, you lose more than just respect. You lose connection. Women are intuitive. They don't just listen to what you say, they feel the energy behind it. And when that energy screams validation seeking, it doesn't matter how shiny the surface is, underneath it's a repellent. Bragging often comes from a place of insecurity. You feel the need to prove something, to impress, to dominate the conversation so she knows your worth. But here's the truth. If you really knew your worth, you wouldn't need to convince her. It would speak in your calm, your presence, your posture, your silence even. When a man is truly confident, he lets the room discover him without needing to shout about himself. He doesn't need to list his wins because he knows his energy communicates what words never could. The guy who brags is trying to sell himself. The guy who's grounded simply is. It's also about intent. Bragging often masks a desire to control the narrative. You're trying to steer her perception of you instead of letting her form her own. That's manipulation in disguise. You talk about your car, your business, your gym routine, not because it's part of a natural story, but because you want her to think, wow, he's impressive. But here's the paradox. When you try too hard to be impressive, you end up being forgettable. Real impact comes from depth. It comes from the way you listen, not just the way you talk. It comes from your emotional intelligence, not just your accomplishments. A lot of men think attraction is logical. If I have X, Y, and Z, she'll want me. But attraction is emotional, energetic, subconscious. It's not the Rolex, it's how you wear it. It's not the income, it's how you carry the pressure. It's not the house, it's whether you feel at home in yourself. When you brag, you disconnect from your essence and step into a performance. And most women can smell that from a mile away. The real ones, the grounded ones, they'll smile, nod, and mentally check out. Bragging also disrupts polarity. In masculine-feminine dynamics, what creates magnetism is presence, the ability to hold space, to be grounded. When you brag, you shift the spotlight onto yourself constantly. You make the conversation about you, that closes her off. That makes her feel unseen. Feminine energy wants to be felt, heard, experienced. When you're talking about your crypto portfolio, instead of asking about her soul, you're missing the point. You're trying to impress her mind, but she's waiting for you to touch her heart. What's even more dangerous is that bragging is addictive. You start getting validation from people reacting to your story, so you keep feeding the ego. You start thinking that your worth is tied to your resume. But the more you inflate the ego, the less space there is for genuine connection. Relationships aren't built on status, they're built on presence. They're built on how safe, how seen, how emotionally tuned in you are. Bragging is a monologue, connection is a dialogue. When you're always trying to be the headline, you miss the moments that could build intimacy. It's not about shrinking yourself. It's not about hiding your success or pretending to be less than you are. It's about letting your life speak for itself. Let her see the way you move. Let her feel your stability. Let her experience your generosity, your discipline, your drive, without needing a verbal report card. The most magnetic men are the ones who carry power lightly, who can walk into a room and change the temperature without needing to raise their voice, who can win without showing off the trophy. That kind of man isn't chasing admiration, he's attracting devotion, not through noise, but through stillness. There's a reason why the loudest guy rarely gets the girl who's really worth it, because she's not looking for someone to perform. She's looking for someone to feel safe with, someone who can hold her complexity without making everything about himself. Someone who can celebrate her, not compete with her. Bragging flips that dynamic. It turns you into the one who needs the spotlight, the approval, the applause. And in doing that, you stop being the grounded masculine presence she was drawn to in the first place.